Hello friends, today we are going to discuss one of the important philosophers of ancient Indian society, the Manu. Manu is considered the first lawgiver of Indian society and he has contributed a lot of knowledge to the jurisprudence of ancient Indian society. Manusmriti is the book written by Manu. Manusmriti has described the Varna Dharma, Varnashrama Dharma, the Machanyaya, Saptanga, and various other aspects. So Manu is considered as an important ancient political philosopher of ancient India. Today, we are going to discuss the Manusmriti, written by Manu. He is the author of Manusmriti, the great book called Manusmriti. So we'll be discussing about the contents of Manusmriti and what are the important aspects of Manu's philosophy, particularly Varna Dharma and Varnashrama Dharma. In today's our lesson plan, we'll go by the following: introduction, Manusmriti, and that describes about a brief introduction of the Manusmriti. What does it contain? How many chapters are there? How many verses are there? In which language it is written? So all these particulars are there, and also the time when Manusmriti was written. These are all the initial facts about the Manusmriti. After that, we'll be discussing about the Manu Dharma, which is also known as the Varna Dharma or Varnashrama Dharma. After that, the Varna Dharma, the Varna system. What is the Varna system? The Chaturvarna system prevailing in Indian society. After that, Manu's views on the origin of state. It's also called as the theory of state. This has three important aspects. One is the origin of state. Before that, the state of nature. He describes about the state of nature, the condition of people before the formation of state. That's called as the state of nature. And how the state is formed. What are the conditions that compel people to have a state? And also, what are the functions of state? And what are the elements of state? So all these aspects are called as the theory of state given by Manu. And after that, we'll be discussing about the monarchy. And in monarchy is a government led by the king. The king is popularly known as Raja. So what are the do's and don'ts of Raja? What are the functions of Raja? That's called as the Raja Dharma. So after that, we'll be discussing about the statecraft. In the statecraft, how Manu suggested various methods to pick up the ministers and higher officials in the state, and how a statecraft is to be built with a profound administration to reach the goals of the state. So this is how the statecraft is also discussed. And after that, he has given a vivid introduction of a criminal justice system in India under the heading of Dandaniti. And as we have all know that ancient Indian political thought has an important feature of Dharma, Danda and Dandaniti. Dharma is a dynamic concept. It is meant by justice with obligation is called as Dharma. And whoever violates the Dharma, they are subject to Danda. And the principles behind the application of punishment or awarding the punishment is called as the Dandaniti. So we'll be discussing about the criminal justice system, in which we'll be discussing the Dharma, Danda and Dandaniti. So these are the three important aspects of ancient Indian political thought. In the previous lessons, we were discussing about the features of Indian political system, ancient Indian political thought, in which we have categorically stated that Dharma, Danda and Dandaniti are the three important elements of ancient Indian political thought. In fact, we have given a brief introduction about the ancient Indian political thought, wherein three important philosophers, Manu, Kautilya and Buddha. So these are the three important philosophers who have given us the theory of the state and also the theory of uh, the Danda, Dharma, Dandaniti, and various other aspects. So after that, in the lesson plan, we'll be discussing about the taxation system or the revenue administration of a state. In the revenue administration, Manu has suggested various forms of taxes to be collected from the people. And the taxes from agriculture, the taxes from trade and commerce, the taxes from intellectuals, the taxes from all the laborers or producing classes. So this is how he has given a vivid description of various forms of taxation and various forms of collecting the taxation. So this is included in the revenue administration or the financial administration of the state. After that, we'll be discussing about the interstate relations. And Manu is the first philosopher of ancient India who has not only described about the administration within the state itself, but he has also given some ideas about maintaining neighborly relations, relations with neighborhood kingdoms, and interstate relations. So for that, he has suggested various methods. So we'll be discussing about the interstate relations. After that, he has maintained a conglomeration of religion and morality with politics. So his political ideas are mixed with religion and morality. It's very difficult to separate political ideas of Manu from religion and morality. So the impact of religion and morality on Manu's political ideas is also described. So in the conclusion, we'll be discussing about what are the drawbacks of Manu's thinking and what are the important advantages or positive points of Manu's philosophy and what are the limitations of Manu's philosophy. So this is the lesson plan, and we'll be discussing Manu and Manusmriti. Manusmriti is an Old Testament. It's an old treatise written in ancient India. And researchers are still making searches on exact date of the Manusmriti. Even today, exact date of Manusmriti is not found. And Indologists like Max Muller, Buffler, and other Indologists have stated various dates. Like Max Muller has stated that probably the 5th century or 4th century could be the date of Manusmriti. But it is generally agreed that between 2nd century BC to 2nd century AD, that means 200 BC to 200 AD, Manusmriti might have been compiled by an intelligent person. So this is how Manusmriti might have compiled during 200 BC. So there is no exact date for Manusmriti. Even researchers are making various discoveries and various insights into the exact date of the Manusmriti itself. But there is no unanimity in their opinions, and various opinions are coming forward in deciding the date of Manusmriti. But it is generally agreed categorically that maybe by 200 BC, Manusmriti might have been compiled. And Manusmriti is known as Manu Dharma Shastra and Manu Dharma Samhita. As we have already discussed in the ancient political philosophy, the features of ancient philosophy, that Dharma, Danda, and Dandaniti are the 3 important aspects of ancient Indian political thought. So Dharma is nothing but justice with an obligation, a duty, is called as Dharma. So Manu has prescribed Dharma to various groups of people and various ages of people. He has categorically divided the society into 4 varnas. That's called the Chaturvarna system. The Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. And for each group, social group, there is a dharma, different dharma. So this is how dharma is a very dynamic concept and which differ from one individual to another individual, one gender to other gender, one age group to other age group. So, and the dharma is also defined in terms of the rulers and defined in terms of law-obedient citizens. So dharma is a very dynamic concept, and Manu has very widely discussed about dharma in his book Manusmriti. That's why this book is also called as Manu Dharma Shastra. And this is also called as Manu Dharma Samhita. Samhita means it's a compendium of all the several works of Dharma. So it's a compendium, that's why it is called Samhita. It's a compilation of all the books. It's a compilation of all the aspects related to Dharma. So that's why it is called Manu Dharma Samhita. And it's also known as Manu Dharma Shastra. It is very rationally and reasonably prescribed the obligations and justice, principles of justice to various social groups. That's why it is called as Dharma Shastra, Manu Dharma Shastra. Originally its name is Manusmriti, but it has other names also, Manu Dharma Shastra and Manu Dharma Samhita. So after that, now let us discuss about Manusmriti. Manusmriti, as I was telling you time and again, that it's an ancient treatise on jurisprudence. It contains 12 chapters with 2,685 verses. It is mostly written in Sanskrit language. Later it is translated into various other languages. In fact, Manusmriti is the only ancient Indian philosophical treatise that is translated into many languages in the world. It is translated into European languages. It is translated into various Indian languages. It is translated into Arabic. It is also translated into various other languages of the world also. So Manusmriti is basically has 12 chapters with the 2,685 verses. So in these chapters and verses, Manu has described the concept of Dharma, the concept of Danda, and the idea of the state, nature of the state, origin of state, and state of nature, and also the functions of state. And in course of discussing the state, he has also given the theory of the Saptanga theory, or the Saptanga state. So this is how he has very widely and very detailed manner has described about the state and its apparatus, and how the statecraft can be structured into various departments: the revenue department, the criminal justice department, the foreign affairs department, the local self-governing bodies, and other departments. So it has a detailed discussion about various aspects of administration. And he has also mentioned about taxation and financial administration in Manusmriti. So Manusmriti, overall, it contains 12 chapters relating to the individuals, relating to social groups, relating to the state, relating to the government, relating to the obligations of the king. The obligations of the king are described as Raja Dharma. So Dharma, Danda, Dandaniti, Raja Dharma are vividly described in Manusmriti. It has 12 chapters with almost 2,685 verses. They are mostly written in Sanskrit language. Now let us discuss the nature of Manusmriti. In fact, it discussed about Dharma, Danda, Dandaniti, and state in ancient India. But it has also made a brief review of all the works that are written by various authors before Manu, and it's a compendium of all the works written by several authors. In fact, it has drawn its sources from Vedas, Upanishads, the epics, Bhagavad Gita, and other important treatises. And it has also drawn various moral aspects, religious aspects, and aspects relating to Dharma from the academic works of various authors. So that's why Manusmriti is nothing but it's a compendium of works of several authors. That's why, as I was telling you, it is also known as Manu Samhita. Manu Samhita means it's a compilation. It's a compendium of works written by several authors. So Manusmriti is a compendium of works of several authors who have written very extensively on Dharma, Danda, Dandaniti, statecraft, and the theory of state, and various other aspects. And not only that, it has also drawn its various other important aspects from Vedas, Upanishads, Brahmanas, epics, and other texts. So that's why Manusmriti is also known as a compendium of works of several authors. Manusmriti is it's primarily a discussion on Varna Dharma. Varna Dharma means the dharmas to be followed by the four varnas in the society. That's called as the Varna Dharma. As the Indian society is classified into four varnas, that's called the Chaturvarna system. In the Chaturvarna system, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Shudras are the four important social groups. There is a functional division of the society into four varnas. And these varnas are again divided into castes and subcastes. So on the whole Indian hierarchical structure, the social structure is called as the Varna Dharma. And it prescribes dharma to various social groups. That's why it is called as the Varna Dharma. What are the obligations of a Brahmin? What are the obligations of a Kshatriya? What are the obligations of a Vaishya? And the obligations of a Shudra. So that's why it is called as Varna Dharma. In fact, it has upheld the Varna system, and it wanted the king to protect the Varna system, to have the functional division of society into various social groups. So that's why Manusmriti is also known as a treatise of Varna Dharma, a Varna Dharma that has evolved from different verses of Manusmriti. So Manudharma is also popularly known as the Varna Dharma. In fact, as soon as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar completed writing the Constitution of India, he has stated that from then onwards, it is only the Constitution that prevails and the Manusmriti will not prevail. So that means till the Constitution is completed writing, Varna system was there, Varna Dharma was there, Manusmriti was followed by each and every person of Indian society. But Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has stated that it is high time to leave away the Varna Dharma system and tractize the aspects written by the Indian Constitution, written in Indian Constitution, the goals, objectives that are suggested by Indian Constitution. In fact, he has also made a function of public burning of Manusmriti. So that means Manudharma has supported the caste system, supported the Varna system. But it has upheld the fourfold division of Indian society into Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. So that's why it is called as Manudharma is famously known as the Varna Dharma system, Varna Dharma treatise. A treatise that encourages the Varna system, that hold the Varna system to its zenith, and it wanted the ruler of the land to protect the Varna system in the Indian society. It is one of the foremost sacred objectives and functions of the king to protect the Varna system in the society. That's why it has upheld the Manudharma or the Varna Dharma system in the Indian society. So Manudharma is famously known as the Varna Dharma. As we all know that Indian society is divided and subdivided into fourfold Varna system. There are four Varnas in Indian society. This fourfold division was suggested by Manusmriti. This fourfold division includes the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and Shudras. So this is how the Indian society is divided into four Varnas. So Varnas have to perform certain duties. The Brahmins are supposed to perform certain duties. The Kshatriyas are to perform certain duties. And likewise, the Vaishyas and Shudras have to perform their respective duties. So performing a duty in a justifiable manner is called as dharma. So Brahmana Dharma, Kshatriya Dharma, Vaishya Dharma, Shudra Dharma. And within the Varna system also, there is again within each varna there is a ashrama system. In the ashrama system, there is different age groups: a bachelor, a family man, a middle-aged man, and a retired man. So this is there is again a fourfold ashrama system within the life of human life of every person: the childhood, youth, and family life, and also the retired life. These are the four important ashramas, or the stages of human life. So in each stage of human life, the citizen is supposed to perform certain important dharmas. So that's called as ashram dharma. So put it comprehensively, it is called as the varna dharma system, varna ashrama dharma system. Varna system means the system of having the social groups have to perform certain important duties with justice is called as varna dharma. And within varna dharma, there's ashramas. There are four stages of human life: the childhood, the youthfulness, and the household life, and also the retired life. These are the four important stages of human life. So within each stage of human life, you need to have certain specific dharmas you have to follow. That's why it is called as the varnashrama dharma. This varnashrama dharma is upheld, and in fact it has evolved from Manusmriti itself. And Manusmriti has categorically given the duty of protecting the varnashrama dharma to the king. So it's the duty of the king to see to it that the people should not violate the varna dharma system or varnashrama dharma system. Any person who deviates from the varna dharma system or varnashrama dharma system is liable to be punished severely by the king. So it's one of the important duties of the state to protect the varna dharma system and varnashrama dharma system. So this is also vividly described in the Manusmriti. And now let us discuss about the political ideas of Manu. In the political ideas of Manu, the first and foremost idea is his theory of state. In fact, in this theory of state, Manu has given four important aspects. The first one is the state of nature. The second one is the origin of state. And third one is the theory of state, or the Saptanga's theory of state. And fourth one is the functions of state. So all these four important points put together is called as the theory of state. He begins with the state of nature, how people lived before the formation of state, when there was no state, when there is no political organization, when there is no political structure, when there are no political institutions, how people are living in ancient societies. So that's called as the state of nature. The condition of people in the nature before the formation of state is called as the state of nature. According to Manu, the state of nature is a very coercive one, and the big fish used to eat the small fish. That's called as the Matsya-Nyaya. In the Matsya-Nyaya, Manu denotes that it is only a strong man that used to suppress the weak people and used to have the luxurious life. So that's called as the Atavika-Nyaya, or the law of jungle, or the Matsya-Nyaya, or the law of fishes. The law of fishes, Manu says that the big fish always have an advantage of eating away the small fish. Likewise, in the society, in a social gathering, it's only the strong man that compel the weak people to lose their pleasures for the sake of the strong man. So this is called as the suppression of the weak by the mightier people. This is called as the Matsya-Nyaya, or Atavika-Nyaya, or the law of jungle. In this state of nature, people prayed the Almighty, and they wanted a code of conduct for all the people. And the Almighty has obliged the appeals of the people, and he has sent a person called the king onto the earth, according to Manusmriti. So Manusmriti says the state is originated as a result of divine origin, as a result of divine interference. as an interference of God, as an interference of divine power, the state is originated. So in the origin of state, Manu has stated that the state is originated due to the interference of God and due to the interference of divine power. So Manu, according to Manusmriti, has stated that the state came into existence with the interference of God when people in the state of nature approached the Almighty and asked them to provide a king. The God has obliged the request of the people and he has created a king with the qualities of all the Ashtadikpalakas, the eightfold persons who protect all the four sides or eight sides of the earth. So they are called as the Ashtadikpalakas. The sun, the moon, the rain god, the Yama, the Kubera, and various other gods. They are called as the 8 gods and goddesses who protect the goddess earth or the earth. So yes, the God has brought various elements of all these 8 gods and he has created another person called a king. So king is a personification of the qualities of the Ashtadikpalakas according to Manusmriti. That means he should have the qualities of a sun and he should have the qualities of a moon, he should have the qualities of a rain god, he should have the qualities of Yama, he should have the qualities of Kubera. So likewise, the king should have the habits and qualities of all the 8 protectors of the earth. So the origin of state is a result of the interference of God or the interference of divine power. And the king has God has obliged the people's request in the state of nature to have a king. And he has created the king according to Manusmriti. And Manu has also given a theory of state that's called as the Saptanga state. In the Saptanga state, Manu has described various 7 elements of state. In the Western philosophy, we discuss about only 4 important elements of the state: population, territory, government, and sovereignty. These are 4 important aspects of state according to Western political thought. But in Indian political thought, there are 7 elements that are required for a state: the king, the Janapada. Janapada means the territory with the people, and the Durga, Kosha, Bala, Mitra, Danda. So these are the important aspects of the state. Every state needs to have a king. It's called Swami. Swami means the king. So king is controlled by the god and he heads the state. The state is headed by the king. So king is the first element of the state. The second one is Janapada. Janapada means a territory with people is called as Janapada. Jana means people. Pada means Pradesh or the territory. So Janapada means people with the territory is called as Janapada. This is the second important element. A third one is the Durga. Durga means the capital or the fort. Every state needs to have a fort. So that's called as the Durga. And the fourth one is Kosha. Kosha means a treasury. A treasure of arms, the treasure of money, the treasure of gold, the treasure of food grains, and various treasures are to be deposited for the well-being of the capital. So that's called as the treasure. So this treasure is called as the Kosha. It's an important element of the state. Kosha. And after that, every state needs to have Bala. Bala means the army. And after that, every state needs to have the friends, allies. And state also need to have Danda. Danda means force. So this is how the 7 elements of state, 7 essential elements of the state are called as the Saptanga theory. Anga means organ. like a human organ having body with the hands, legs, eyes, nose, and everything. Even the state also required to have 7 important organs. So the 7 important organs of the state are called as the Saptanga state. So even if one organ is defunct or dysfunctional, the state will not function. So that's why all the 7 important organs are inevitable for the formation of the state, for the functioning of state, and for the fulfillment of objectives of the state. So after that, Manu has also described about the functions of state, has described about the welfare functions, the police functions, the spiritual functions of the state. These are the 3 important functions of state. So put together all these points, the nature of state or the state of nature, the origin of state, the theory of state or the Saptanga state, and functions of state is called as the theory of state. So it's an important theory in the ancient Indian texts. Particularly Manusmriti has described about the state of nature, origin of state, Saptanga state, and functions of state. So that's why it's a very unique idea of state in the ancient political philosophy of India. After that, Manu Dharma Shastra or Manusmriti has described about monarchy as the best form of government, and a monarchy is headed by king. So the state headed by king is called as monarchical form of government. So Manu has suggested monarchy is the best suited form for any state. So monarchy is considered as a best possible state headed by a king. And king also need to have some disciplinary aspects, some important essential qualities for a king. And it has also described about the duties of king. Almost the duties of king and duties of the state are almost equal. The king also used to perform duties like the police functions, the welfare functions, functions related to taxation, functions related to the formation of ministry, appointing higher officials. And the king also need to protect the Varna system in the Indian society. It's the duty of the bond and duty of the king to protect the Varnashram Dharma in the Indian society. So that's how monarchy is considered as an ideal form of government in which the king or the Raja heads the government, and Manusmriti prescribes a code of behavior for the king. That's called as the Raja Dharma. In the Raja Dharma, it details about the welfare functions of the king, the police functions of the king, the spiritual functions of the king, and the day-to-day functions like the revenue administration, financial administration, the criminal justice administration, the local self-government administration, the foreign external affairs administration, and various other aspects of the king. And it has also described about various methods to appoint the kings, appoint the ministers and higher officials in the state. It discusses it in a statecraft. So monarchy is the best suited form of government according to Manu for any society. And monarchy is to be headed by a king. The government headed by the king is called as monarchy. And king also need to have a code of conduct and need to have a concrete duties, obligations. And he should be the lawgiver, he should implement the law, and he should also render justice when the law is violated. So this is how Rajadharma is also described in Manusmriti. And after that, Manusmriti has described about the statecraft. In the statecraft, Manusmriti has described how the ministers are to be selected from among the intellectuals of the society, and various other officials, important officials, the police officials, the civilian officials, and officials who are to be posted for taxation and tax collections. So how these officials are to be selected? Through a system of examinations, competitive examinations. and the system of various examinations related to uh, lobha, kama, and they should not be subjected to all any wickedness or any deceptive behavior. So an official or a minister has to undergo so many tests before getting appointed to a responsible position. So this is how he has described about the statecraft, and he has suggested that a model king need to have a number of 8 ministers, 4 to 8 ministers in his ministry. And these 4 to 8 ministers have to render service to the king on specific matters of the importance, and these matters are to be assigned to the ministers by the king himself. So this is how the formation of the Council of Ministers and the appointing of other officials is also described in Manusmriti. So after that, Manusmriti has described about the criminal justice system in Indian society. In fact, he has defined the concept of crime and justice. And he says, in the Chaturvarna system, anything that is contrary to the origins and foundations of the caste system or the Varna system is found as to be offensive and crime. So that's why he has also given a system of punishment based on the Chaturvarna system. If a Brahmin commits a mistake, he can be let off with a small punishment. If a Kshatriya commits a crime, the same crime committed by the Brahmin, he should be given a little more severe punishment. If the same crime is committed by Vaishya, the system of punishment endows more punishment on Kshatriya. And if the same crime is committed by a Shudra of the society, and punishment should be much more severe. So that means the crime is same, but the system of punishment varies from one Varna to other Varna. So it's only to deter the lower caste people from committing crimes against the upper caste people or against the stability of the state. So this is how the criminal justice system renders a system of punishments based on the Varna system. And it has also given a system of witnesses, and it has prohibited certain persons from giving witnesses, and it has upheld certain persons only to give evidence before the king and before the judicial administrators and judges. So criminal justice system is also very wonderfully described by Manusmriti in various verses. After that, Manu has described Dandaniti. Dandaniti means, Danda means punishment. Dandaniti means the principles behind the punishment is called as Dandaniti. So he has described about the Dandaniti. As I have already told you, the 3 important elements of ancient Indian society, ancient Indian philosophy include Dharma, Danda and Dandaniti. So Manu has described Dharma. He has also described about Danda and Dandaniti. Danda means the system of punishment. Dandaniti means the principles behind awarding the punishment. That's called as the Dandaniti. Punishment should not be given in a very liberal manner in accordance to the whims and wishes of the king. The king should follow a system of codes and code of punishments. So that's how there are certain principles laid down behind the punishment, a system of punishment. So these principles behind the system of punishment is called as Dandaniti. So Danda and Dandaniti are also described in Manusmriti. So after that, he has given the taxation and financial administration. According to Manu, the taxation system varies from one economic sector to other economic sector. Agriculture, small scale industries, trade and commerce, labor. These are important sectors of any economy. According to Manu, all the agricultural classes have to pay at least 1/6 of their agricultural yield to the state as a taxation. The taxation is an annual taxation. So the state appoints certain persons to collect the taxes from the people. So this is how 1/6 of the agricultural produce or agricultural yield is considered to be the tax that farmers have to pay to the state. And likewise, the traders and commercial merchants, businessmen, they also need to pay the taxes, 1/5 of their profits in a year. They are supposed to pay at least 1/5 of their profits in a year as taxes. And all the labor classes, all the productive classes have to render at least 1 day in a month as a free day to the state. They should render service to the king. So this is how the system of taxation is very concrete, and it is very reasonable, and it is suggested in a rational manner. So in the financial administration, certain auditors are appointed to supervise the taxation system, the collection of taxes, and the deposition of collection of taxes to the state exchequer. So this of the financial administration lays down certain important principles behind the taxation and the revenue system in Manusmriti. After that, it has also discussed the interstate relations. In the interstate relations, Manusmriti has described the neighboring kings as allies, and among them, it is only the political expediency that decides the nature of relations among the kings and the neighboring kingdoms. So, if the political expediency is of normal nature, there may be friendly relations among the states. If it is abnormal, then sometimes the cordial relations may turn out to be animosity. So he has stated that a king should have good relations with his neighborhood kings, and in the best interest of the state, he also need to have and prepare to wage any type of war with his neighboring kings, and he should only protect the interests of the state. So lastly, Manu also has described about the religion and morality, has suggested that religion gives discipline to the people, and all people need to be religious. And once a person is a believer of religion, he can be well aware of his dharma. So a religious person is considered to be a person with a dharma, and an irreligious person is considered as indisciplined or irreligious. So that's why religion and morality should be an integral part of human life, according to Manusmriti. So friends, these are some of the important aspects of Manusmriti. And Manusmriti is considered as the first lawgiver of Indian jurisprudence. And of course, it has reviewed various aspects of Dharma from Vedas, Upanishads, Brahmanas, and various writings of academic scholars. But it's the first and foremost compendium of Indian jurisprudence. But it has certain limitations. In fact, George Bahler described Manu as the legendary first man, the Adam of Hindus. In spite of these appreciations and advantages, there is a lot of criticism against Manu Dharma Shastra. It upholds the caste system and it upholds the Varna system. That's an important drawback of the Manu system. Manu system has supported the Chaturvarna system and the caste system. So for this, reason, Manusmriti is opposed by many scholars in the modern system. In the modern societies, we insist upon liberty, equality, justice, and fraternity. But the Manudharma Shastra is contrary to all these four ideals. And it has never believed in freedom of the individual. It has never in favor of upholding equality among the people. And it has based its justice system on Chaturvarna system, which is again inequalities. And its fraternity is also not acceptable. It doesn't accept fraternity. So due to these limitations, Manudharma Shastra is not accepted as modern scholars. So friends, these are some of the important aspects of Manudharma Shastra. Thank you very much, friends. Thank you.